This is Grant Gondrzik II. Let's tighten up.
Detroit, it's time to tighten up. Welcome to Tighten Up, the podcast, presented by The Shield NIL. Brought to you by Hyperice and Last Shot Energy. A state of the Titans, the latest in Detroit Mercy athletics, and a chance to hear from Titans all over the world. Here's your host, Dan Hasty.
It is amazing how fast this season goes by. I mean, you look now and it's literally the home stretch of this season of Detroit Mercy basketball. This has moved quickly for so many of us, and Detroit Mercy sits with a chance, an outside chance. They're still working for this, and if things fall into place, they could hypothetically host a first-round game in the Horizon League tournament. And considering everything that was last season and how hard that was, getting a first round home postseason game, that's a big win if the Titans are able to get there. It's a lot of things that have happened that have gone in the right direction for Detroit Mercy basketball. We've got a very busy week here on Tighten Up. Welcome back in. It's another edition of Tighten Up the podcast. Glad to have you along with us. And we have got a jam-packed show for you today. Anybody see the Super Bowl halftime show, by the way? Did you see Kendrick Lamar? More importantly, though, did you see the cameo from Uncle Sam himself, Samuel L. Jackson? He dropped a very interesting line that fits this show perfectly. Take a look.
Do you really know how to play the game? Then tighten up.
Perfect. Tighten up. I mean, it's almost like we asked him to say it. It doesn't get much better. And at least now we have drops for Tighten Up the podcast. So, without further ado, and by the way, this is our first show this week. We'll have another one coming up later this week. We've got a handful of players still left. And unfortunately, we thought we would have a player for today's show, but unfortunately, they're out for the season and they're not going to be able to join us here today. Wait a minute. Hold on.
Surprise.
Check that. Surprise. Mak Manciel is here.
Yes, sir.
What's up, man? Welcome back.
What's going on? I appreciate you for having me. I definitely appreciate it.
It's the best news that Detroit Mercy basketball got all season long, because only a couple of months ago, I remember you trying to close out on a three-point shot, and I remember that ankle turning, and I remember thinking, okay, well, this really changes the arc of the season, and you were coming into playing your best basketball. And then all of a sudden, you just have to feel like, oh, here we go again. So tell me a little bit about what that felt like for you, and we'll kind of go in order. But because you got off to that great start this year.
Yeah. So this was probably about 5 games in the season, going into Ball State, feeling good. The game prior to, I was in foul trouble, so that was probably the worst game that I've had as of the season. So it was I wasn't really feeling too much pressure or anything like that. Just going to the game regular, trying to get prepared, being with my guys, excited just to try to go out there and get a dub. And unfortunately, within the first, I probably played like 5-6 minutes. And just a crazy play, ended up closing out, stepping on his foot partially. And just that angle that I stepped on, my ankle ended up popping out. And immediately I knew that there was obviously something wrong. It didn't feel like it was even, in place. I ended up looking down, seeing that it's not looking too good. And I had a little bit of panic, but I just didn't want to be causing too much like commotion. I just kind of want to get out of there, see what was going on. So I look over to the bench, I call, somebody over, they come get me, and I get taken to the back. And I was in pain, but all I can remember was thinking about like, I might be done for the year. And that was like, it killed me inside. Honestly, I broke down crying. It was more so just because I knew how much effort and time I put into this year. And then something so just by the random out the blue, it wasn't like, something crazy. It was just kind of a closeout. Could have been avoided if I would have stayed on my feet and listened. But things happen, and so I was really down, honestly. And then my teammates, I can see the emotion and I can see how they felt about the situation as well. And so it was kind of hard, and it was pretty sad, especially for me, because I felt that I had put so much time and effort into getting back, and I wasn't completely healthy last year, and this was the first time where I feel like I was coming into a season more prepared than years prior, and just like that, it kind of slipped away from me a little bit. And so from there on out, it was just kind of figuring out how I wanted to approach it, what was going to happen, what were the chances and the possibilities to happen. And it just kind of ended up working out how it is. And so, now I'm back, put a lot of work in, and, we're getting better. So it was a roller coaster of emotions, though, for sure, because I was very uncertain with, how things were going to play out, if I was going to be able to recover in time to come back. And even crazy to say, like, the doctors, I'm back way earlier than what the doctors said I would have been. And that's partially me being a little hard-headed and, going hard on things. But then also, like, I put a lot of time and effort into it. So it's not like just random, I really did kind of work for the things. I was doing treatment 2-3 times a day, every day, and just honestly keep going. And so I was just stacking days, and each day I would feel better, break some scar tissue up, do this. And, now we're here. So it was a crazy kind of couple months for sure, though. Crazy couple months.
Well, shout out to Sean Clark, the Detroit Mercy
basketball
athletic trainer. I know he has been very busy this year. And by the way, it's a brutal way to remind you to not leave your feet on a closeout. I just want to say that. I think you will be remembering that for a while. But I want to go back to last year, though, because you come back from the ACL, and a lot of people say that it takes about a year from that torn ACL to get back to 100%. And seeing the difference between watching you play last year versus watching you play this year, I mean, it's clear to us. We can see it. But I'm curious as you're feeling it, what feels different? How did it feel last year versus how it feels this year, at least before the ankle?
Yeah. So last year I was capable, but I didn't have the athleticism that I was used to having. So I was very slow. I couldn't really push off. I couldn't plant. So I'm it's kind of like fighting a losing battle, because you want to close out, you want to get there. But if you do close out, now you're not as fast to recover. So now you're just getting blown by. And so I wasn't performing well, you know what I'm saying? And then I was also dealing with me not really having my legs underneath me, which added to the fact that every time I'm shooting the ball, my legs are a little heavy. So I'm dealing with stuff like that. And then on defense, I love playing defense, and I can't do that to the extent that I have done it prior. So it was very hard last year, just because I wasn't ready myself, but I was trying as hard as I could. And it just I didn't feel like it was catching up with me. I was putting all this work in, getting shots up, but it wouldn't translate because my legs just weren't under me for real. So moving on into this year, over the summer, I was able to, do some things to help my knees and also get my legs, my strength back, and my fast twitch muscles, and my athleticism was able to come back to where I was feeling good. I was never not able to dunk, but I was able to dunk explosively again and just, feel good while I was doing things. And it was honestly night and day, spending the whole summer kind of getting back into it. I ended up getting it's called a PRP shot, to where they basically take the blood out, spin it around in the machine, get the plasma, inject it into your knee. And then that worked magic. Honestly, it was crazy, because I was having daily knee problems prior to, just more soreness, constantly banging and everything. And because of that shot, it was after about a month of, the recovery process, I felt like I had a brand new knee for, still to this day, it's carried over. I don't have the same knee problems that I had prior to. And so that really helped out. But there was a lot that went into, the recovery process, besides just, getting in the gym, because that was never the problem. I always was in the gym, but it was more so getting my body, to the standard that it needed to be. So that was probably the biggest difference from last year compared to this year. I was able to come into this year more ready and actually healthy than last year. I was honestly probably about 70% with, my legs just not even really being there. So it was a couple more battles to fight last year than, this year, but that was kind of how everything ended up playing out.
So the PRP injections, highly recommend. That's what it
Definitely.
sounds like.
Definitely. If you're dealing with the problems that I was dealing with my own knee, then I would 100% recommend it. And I only end up doing one shot. They recommend doing a cycle of 3, and just off the one shot alone, I felt night and day better. So, I would definitely attest to it for sure.
When you see how the early part of the season went for you, and I mean, it was pretty clear right away that you were an advanced version of yourself from last year. I mean, just watching you go to the basket, I think it was almost the first game we saw you in Detroit, said, oh, that we didn't see that last year. That's different. That's different. Yeah. So then you end up with that 30-point game against Niagara, which was as good as we've seen you play. I mean, 9 for 15 from the floor, 6 of 7 from 3-point range, 30 and 8 rebounds. You play 40 minutes in an overtime game. And that was significant also because you remember how long it took to get a win last year. Exactly. So to get a win, I mean, that felt really significant. And you were such a big part of that. It probably felt like a huge weight off your shoulders.
It definitely did, because into that game with us playing Cleary first and then Loyola Chicago, it was 2 kind of different extremes. You know what I'm saying? One school is kind of, you're trying to work on things, but you go into the game not necessarily expecting a win, but you kind of understand what you're getting into. And then with Loyola Chicago, we have a lot of freshmen, and that's a bigger school. So there was a lot of nerves that went into it. But Niagara was the first school to where you can say, okay, we are both Division I programs that it's a legitimate chance for or expectations wise, it's a legitimate chance for either team to win. So we thought it was very important just to kind of come into this game, play as hard as we can. And it was a very important game leading into it. We felt that we had to win this game to kind of prove that, this is not going to be like last year. Like we have a fighting chance against really any team that we play. And if we all play together and then just play hard, then anything can happen. And so with that dub being secured, that kind of released a little stress off of our shoulders, saying, okay, we know we can do this. We've seen that we can do it. Now let's just keep getting better and, keep trying to keep things going. And
because of all these extra minutes that you're playing and all these extra shots that you're taking, I keep hearing your name and having to say your name more and more on the broadcasts. Yeah. And we had a conversation about this last year, and I'd like to give you the opportunity to set the record straight. How do you pronounce your last name?
So it's funny because ever since I was a kid, I've heard multiple different versions from multiple different people. Me and my family, we pronounce it Mancel, like M-A-N and then S-E-L-L, like Mancel. I've heard Manciel. I've heard Manciel. I've heard a bunch of different variations, but typically in my family, we go by Mancel. So just kind of keep it simple and easy.
And the truth shall set you free. All right. So here's one thing that I think a lot of people are curious about. So the Ball State game. So you hurt the ankle. Then, of course, we don't see you for a while. There's another injury. Jared Larry also gets hurt. And then we see the news that it sounds like you're going to be out for the rest of the season. And I think that was a very fair expectation. You even said it yourself. You surprised a lot of people by how fast you healed up. So take me through how everything went down.
So initially, well, first, I feel like this needs to be mentioned. That night that I dislocated my ankle, I went to the hospital through the ambulance, whatever, and they took an x-ray saying that I broke something, basically connecting my ankle to my foot that I put pressure on. And so when they told me that, they automatically told me that, okay, that makes the recovery of this a lot longer than, say, if you were to just dislocate it, or say it was just dislocation, you didn't tear anything or break anything. So hearing that, I was kind of like, okay, well, it set the bar to where I'm already kind of expecting not to come back, just because I know that this I might have to have surgery. I might have to do something. And that's a whole different process than just a regular dislocation. Anyway, so we go through that x-ray. They told me I broke something. 2 days later, the team ends up leaving. They have an away trip, but I had to stay back. I had another x-ray. And so through those 2 days, I received lots of well wishes, lots of people saying they were praying for me. I was praying a lot myself. Up getting another x-ray, and they told me that it looks like a regular ankle, just a bad ankle sprain, basically. So from that little change right there was an immediate, there's a chance. Like there's a possibility that I can figure something out and end up coming back. And so through talking to the doctor, I saw the doctor at the hospital and the doctor that comes to Detroit Mercy. And they were both telling me time frames about 3-ish months. And immediately I'm telling my parents, I'm telling the doctors, I'm trying to come back January 1st. That was my initial goal, which was extremely optimistic, a little delusional, if I admit myself, but it was a goal that I had set. And so there on out, as I told Sean, look, this is what we're gonna do. As soon as we get this MRI, I'm going hard. Whatever, give me as much as I can. I'm gonna do it as much as I can. I'm gonna run. I'm gonna do everything that you can give for me to do. I'll do it as hard as I can, as many times as I can a day, based on how my ankle feels. And as soon as we kind of found out that there's a possibility that I would be able to make it back for some games, it was full go. And so every day I'm coming in there early, go to class, go to practice. During practice, I'll go do therapy again. I'll get on the treadmill for a little bit, run a couple miles. And it was just a progressive, constantly stacking days. And at first, because of me possibly being able to get a medical red shirt and me get my year of backup eligibility, it was kind of debating if I should even come back and just be able to come back next year and have a full season, or if I should try to fight through this and be able to play with this team this year. And the team that we have this year played a very big role in me fighting so hard to come back, because honestly, this is one of my favorite teams I've ever been on. As far as just, yeah, we have a lot of freshmen and they're very hard-headed sometimes, but I love all of them. They're all my guys. They listen, they play hard. And that's something that you can't find everywhere. At the end of the day, I know that the freshmen we have this year are going to play hard. They're going to compete, and everything else that goes along, that's my job to help talk them through it, help them prepare them for what they have not experienced yet. And so besides from them, we have Orlando, Legend, Jay Larry, E-Man, all these vets that I've known prior to. And then, of course, with E-Man, I played with him last year, so he's one of the guys returning with me. Is just it really feels like a family. It feels like a bunch of guys that have known each other for many years prior to, and we just somehow, some way all ended up on the same team. And so because of that, it made me want to push even harder to know that I know my guys miss me and I miss my guys. So I'm going to try my hardest to get back on this floor, because I know the impact that I can have for them, but also just to help, bring this team together more and more. Because when I went down, it was a big piece of, I would say, leadership that kind of, or a voice more so, that just kind of wasn't there. And it's really hard for me to do the same things on the sideline that I could do on the court, because yeah, you see things differently and you act differently, but it's you almost, when you're hurt, you feel so disassociated from the situation going on. You don't really feel like you're really involved as much as obviously you playing. But it was a pretty big mental battle, and I prayed about it a lot. But I decided that I can do this, I can come back, and my ankle was thankfully working with me. I didn't have too many days to where I was saying I couldn't do something because of how sore it was or anything like that. It was kind of just suck it up, keep going, contrast, nothing a little ice can't help, and keep it going. So it was a lot that went into it, but because of my guys and just God helping me have faith and everything like that, it was I was able to kind of get it done. So it was a very exciting time though, because there was a lot of thought going into it, but a lot of time going into it as well. So it was an experience.
It's easy to forget that the game that you got hurt, Titans won that game to go to 3-2. So they were over 500, which I don't think had happened in the non-conference portion of the season in years. So you guys were off to a real start. And to get you back, I mean, look, for you to be motivated enough to work that hard to come back, there has to be a situation worth working hard to get back to. And you kind of spoke to some of the freshmen and some of the guys who are leaders on this team, but you fill such an important role for this team, because, and we saw what it looked like without you being there, the ability to knock down shots, especially from deep. That was just something that the Titans didn't have without you being there. So I'm sure it was probably just grinding you having to sit there and watch all of that.
It was hard for sure, because I know what we could do and I know what I also could bring to it, and it was hard to kind of coach guys up and explain certain things because I can't necessarily show you what I mean. I can tell you and try my best to really explain it, but it was hard to kind of have a camaraderie between everybody because we had so much going on. And mind you, I'm hurt. Jay Larry gets hurt not too long after, and then Steve-O's dealing with some back problems, and then Miles rolls an ankle, and Lando rolls his ankle. So it was just constant battling, figuring out who's going to be able to practice today, who's going to be able to do this, do that. And so, honestly, I got to give a lot of praise to not only our coaches, but my team we've had a lot of resilience this year. There's not a lot of things that behind the scenes, but there's been a lot of injuries and a lot of guys fighting through some things to where nobody really knows this. So, it's kind of just the unseen things that I have to give respect to my guys and our coaches for having not only the trust, but the patience, for the team that we've had this year. And so, I definitely got to give a shout out to them guys because they've been fighting just like me. So, it was more so everybody kind of together and just constantly, we got to keep stacking days and just keep things going.
You know what I really like about this team? It feels like they don't try to be something they're not. They really do have an identity, and that, defense, rebounding, getting high percentage shots, riding the hot hand. For example, even though there's not a whole lot of guys who shoot threes that much, you guys are right there in the middle of the pack in the Horizon League in 3-point percentage. Now, that's percentage. The thing that I like, though, is that they really don't shoot very many threes. And I think you being out of the lineup had a lot to do with that. I think if you were around, I think you'd see a very different number there. But the thing I like on top of that is that you guys hold your opponents to the worst 3-point field goal percentage in the entire conference. And I am sure that you guys know that, and I'm sure that's something that you guys take pride in.
Definitely. That's our defense is definitely a big part of our identity because at the end of the day, of course, if shots aren't falling, you have to have something else to fall back on because it's possible to win games off of just having great defense because some shots fall, some shots don't fall. That's basketball. But at the end of the day, if you can say that you worked hard and you were able to hold the other team, it makes your offense honestly easier because then you get more transition. They're tiring themselves out on offense. So when we get on offense, they'll be tired on when they're playing defense. And so Coach Monty has done a great job of teaching us, what he wants from us with, being in the gaps or how many people he wants to go crash this game or who has to get back. And so the preparation is there. And honestly, it goes with our effort as well. We know that we have to play hard because there aren't a lot of teams that can get 5 players to play hard on the court. And so if we can get 5 guys playing hard, it's almost, it's hard to beat that. Regardless if shots are falling or not, it's hard to beat 5 guys playing with each other, playing for each other. If someone gets beat, you got a guy right there for help, and then another guy's going out to the other man. And so it causes a lot of commotion, and when it's a lot going on like that, it's just hard to get your team going. But when we can stay solid in our defense, it really helps us out because as you can see, with me not being there, we didn't have as many guys that were able to score. And so that puts certain people in positions that may have not been in a position prior to. And because of our defense, it gives us a chance every game. We know every game that if we play our defense, we will have a chance to win this game. And that our defense that's mainly effort. You're taught the simple things, staying on your feet on closeouts, making sure you're in the gap, things of that sort. And if you just do that plus the effort, that's a pathway to somewhat success. So just kind of listening to what our coaches are telling us and keeping the energy high every day. Those are some big things that we've had to focus on because like you said, if you're not shooting a lot or shots ain't falling, you got to find something else to lift you up a little bit. So we've used our defense for that.
You mentioned Monty. So Mark Montgomery, not as many people know this. And if you're really connected, and odds are if you're listening to this right now, you might remember that Mark Montgomery actually came in as an assistant with the Titans a couple of years ago. So it was 2021. It was that COVID year. It was that shortened basketball season. Titans had an over 500 year that year. And mainly one of the big influential factors came in the second half of that year. And the Titans went on a big time run late in that season. I believe they won 9 of their last 12 games, and it was all conference games at that point. And I don't think it's a coincidence, but that also lined up exactly when Mark Montgomery quietly joined the coaching staff. He had been let go from Northern Illinois. He came in, and all of a sudden, the Titans started playing really, really good basketball. And having been around and having been in those meetings, one of the things that I felt was that he had a connectability with the guys, with the players, and an ability to communicate with them. So I'm curious the way you see it. How does he connect with you guys?
Honestly, that was a great point right there. If he does a great job of listening as well as teaching. And so that was, that's something that, especially in this generation, it's not the best, but especially because we have so many freshmen, they all want to be heard. And so that's something that I had to learn myself. When someone tells me something, you got to listen before you respond back. And that's something that we have that takes time, you know what I'm saying? Because especially in basketball, you're so emotionally charged. You hear something, you just want to say something back and just kind of keep the conversation going. And Coach Monty does a great job of not only putting players in check, saying, okay, look, this is really how it's going to go. But at the same time, if say we're watching film or something and Orlando or me or E or somebody just sees something, points it out, he does a great job of kind of letting us get the point across and teach the guys up, and then also doubling back on it and explaining why, how he wants it done, and who he's specifically talking about. And so because we have such a great connection of it, we don't feel necessarily tense, when Coach Monty is talking, because we know we can learn from him, but also he is very open to kind of understanding also kind of what we have going on and how we feel and how we saw it. And then even if we don't agree, he'll go back and watch the film. And if say they were right, he will tell you himself, I watched the film, I saw what you were talking about, I understand now. And just like that, it's, there's a mutual respect right there already, because now you know that he actually was listening and he's seen what you were talking about. And if you're wrong, he'll bring it up again and say, look, this is why you were wrong because of this, and this on the film. And it makes everything a lot easier, because a lot of times, you'll hear things where it's do this, and this, and then you really don't have a good example. You don't really know how. And so you're kind of struggling to Coach Monty, he'll hop in practice and show you how he wants it done. So there's no debate on how he wants things ran and what he wants from guys. And because of that, I got to give a lot of props to Coach Monty, because he does a great job with that specifically.
It's interesting. It's one thing if it's always you're doing this wrong, doing this wrong. But if there's that little give and take where every once in a while, hey, I went back, I saw this, you had it right. That goes a long way. And I feel like you'd be a good person to answer this, because I've known you for a couple of years now, and I feel like you have a pretty good handle on it, because you've played at a couple of different schools, you played for a couple of different coaches. How does, in your opinion, how does today's athlete at the college level, how does today's athlete want to be coached?
I feel like it's more so based on person to person, because me growing up personally, and we can have Orlando Lovejoy attest to this, but playing for Orlando's pops, he got me ready for a lot of hard coaching. And because of that, I know for a fact, if a coach is sitting here yelling at me, it's not going to really break me down. It'll and that's also a test to Coach Mike Davis, because Coach Mike Davis was very hard on me on as well. And that was another maturing process that I went through, and I have a lot of respect for him, because it just helped me honestly grow up a little bit. And that takes a level of maturity for some guys. Some guys can take hard coaching, some guys can't take hard coaching. And it honestly really depends, because some guys need hard coaching and some guys break down under hard coaching. So it's really kind of player to player, because there's some guys that are going to go extra hard with that motivation, and there's some guys that shut down saying, oh, he doesn't mess with me, or coach doesn't think I'm capable, or whatever you make up kind of in your head. Because at the end of the day, everyone wants to win at the end of the day. So whatever you're being told, you should look at it as, he's trying to help me out, not trying to bring me down. And that's something that I try to teach a lot to our freshmen this year, because you come in with an expectation, and it may not be how things are set to go, but being open-minded and just kind of sitting back and listening a little bit can take you a lot farther than kind of going with what you have made up in your mind. Because at the end of the day, everyone has a role that they have to play. Everyone has to kind of do things a certain way, and kind of getting used to that adjustment, because some players can really lock into that role really well, and some guys struggle with that. So it really goes from a player to player, basis for real, because everyone's different, and every coach coaches differently as well. So that's definitely one of the struggles of college basketball, finding a good fit, as a player to coach, because it is very hard to find guys with personalities that don't clash and things of that sort, because there's a lot that goes into it. But it really honestly depends, because I know a lot of guys that enjoy the hard coaching because it makes them play harder. But then I know guys that need kind of that freedom to feel like they're not being, held down and restricted so much to where they can't play their game and things of that sort. So there's definitely a lot that goes into it. So it's kind of hard to establish what's best, I guess you can say, because things work differently for different groups of people. So, that's kind of my perspective on it, I guess.
I once heard a coach say, I treat everybody the same, but I treat everybody different. I think that kind of applies here. You also mentioned, and this reminded me, that in this game, everybody seems to know everybody. And even if you're not on the same team, you probably played with one another at some point along the way.
Yep.
You just casually mentioned that you played for Orlando's dad. Take me back to that.
Okay, so I went to elementary school with Orlando. So I've known Orlando Lovejoy since we were probably 4 years old. My first ever AAU team, called the Super Friends, when I was almost just learning to play a basketball, I had Orlando ball-head himself, right next to me, trying to get the game going. And so that relationship, that's literally one of my brothers. His little brother is real cool with my little brother. So it's kind of family ties. We've known each other, basically our whole lives. And that played into, this year. I never had the opportunity to play with Orlando ever since basically AAU. So this was an opportunity to where I know, there's some sort of connection there to where we've done this multiple times before. We're kind of cut from the same cloth. We play hard, we're energy guys, we're leaders at the same time. That was easy, to kind of get back, because Orlando knows how I play. He knows things that maybe not everyone else would know. And Orlando's a vet, of course, so he's, he got a lot for himself. But just that's same thing with Legend. Legend didn't play AAU with us at that time period, but he was in Michigan. We playing AAU against him, so that relationship's already formed. It's a little love-hate to begin with, but as you grow up, it's all kind of remember back in the day when we played at this school and this and this. And so it's just it's a very small world with basketball, because even with like E-Man, I went to school with his cousin, and so I knew his cousin before I knew E-Man. And somehow, some way, it's just a full circle moment. And so it's that's one of the best things about basketball. I feel like the amount of people that you meet, the guys that you run, into back to back, years down the line and everything. That's one of the most exciting things for sure. And I was blessed to kind of have the group of guys that I had with me, because a lot of these guys I've known for a fairly long time at this point.
You never got like hard fouled by Legend in an AAU game, did you?
I'm sure I have. I'm definitely sure I have. Honestly, the biggest battles was me and Orlando, though. I'm not gonna lie. We used to be in practice almost fighting each other. So there's definitely a lot that's gone into this.
Well, at least you got him as a teammate now. I was going to ask you, because you were one of the few guys who stayed from one coach to another. And I know you're local. I know Detroit is your hometown. So I know that it means something to you to be here. But it's not always that simple. When one coach goes out and another goes in, it's not a guarantee that you're going to keep anybody from the previous roster. So why'd you stay?
Well, first, I love Detroit. I grew up down the street from Detroit Mercy, so this is the definition of home for me. I've been in Callahan multiple times before I even was enrolled into the school. And at the same time, I've been to a different school every year of my career up into Detroit Mercy with me, not necessarily as a bad thing, but, I started JUCO, then Arkansas State, then my coach wasn't there anymore. So it was kind of, okay, the new coach came in and I left. Let's see what happens if I stay this time, kind of thing. And I had heard from other outside sources kind of a little bit about Coach Monty, and then plus my dad's relationship with Coach Monty being, one of his prior players. it was kind of one of those things to where stay tight, talk to Coach Monty, see how he's feeling, see what he kind of knows about you, what his approach is to the situation. And it just ended up working out. I kind of came into the situation feeling like I was in basically a new situation, to where it's a fresh start. I get to kind of establish who I am, how I approach things, the type of person that, not necessarily that I am, because I stay consistent, throughout, but it's just a kind of a way to a fresh start. These are new guys coming in. I get to kind of establish some that I didn't establish last year that I could have done a much better job at. And so I kind of took the approach as not necessarily a second chance, but just another what's the word I'm looking for? Another situation, that can be favorable at the end of the day. And so, after Coach Monty came in, I was able to sit down and talk to him about it. And he basically kept it straight with me. He says, look, this is how you performed last year, regardless of the injury or not. This is what we need. This is what is expected. This is what you have to improve on. And from there, it was, clarity. I showed him what I can do, kind of a healthier side of me, the things that wasn't really even on film last year. And so he kind of, instilled some trust into me, told me he believes in me, what he wants me to do. And from there, it kind of just, the rest is history. So now we're here.
I know Detroit is your home. You just talked about that. You've already been here for a season. I know this place is special for you.
Yep.
What ways have you had a chance to get out and help people around, especially, not downtown, but, the surrounding areas, the areas around Callahan?
Well, honestly, the biggest thing that I guess what for me that I really enjoyed as helping, it wasn't necessarily outside of Callahan, because it did take place in Callahan, but the basketball camps that we've held, I love being able to teach the game, even to people that may not be as involved in the game as, other people that have been playing for multiple years, but just seeing a bunch of kids have the joy and the desire to just get better at something that I've spent almost my whole life, constantly working for. It's just so fun, and it just makes me feel good to be able to share just skills and drills and everything that kind of goes into teaching the game of basketball, and just seeing the joy and how much the kids that come to these camps really enjoy just being with the guys and seeing guys dunk and just shoot half court shots and honestly feeling like they're learning, picking up on things as basketball. And I honestly love it. It's one of my favorite things in the world, because I feel like I'm being able to do something that you never know. You can be coaching up the next, LeBron James, who knows? And you could have been part of the piece to why he felt so strongly about wanting to play basketball. And so just kind of trying to be a great example to kids and really just, being an example at the end of the day, because there are a lot of kids, especially being, in Detroit, that look up to us being able to play college basketball and going through the things that they might be going through now in high school, middle school, and things of that sort. It was just, being an example and being able to help out kids to grow their love for basketball, honestly. And I any opportunity that I get to do that, I love being able to kind of just share information and just, kick it with the kids and just, have fun playing basketball with them.
If you want to use Mac or any Detroit Mercy basketball player, women's basketball, any Detroit Mercy student athlete for a camp that maybe you're putting on, you can do that. You can go to theshieldnil.org. You can get information how to use people just like Mac or Mac himself to come out. I'm sure he would be happy to go to your basketball camp. Let's talk about your dad, Mak Manciel, especially now that we know how to pronounce your last name. Right. So he played 4 years at Central Michigan, and he had quite the career there. So obviously, you're like so many other guys that had basketball in their family. And I am curious when it comes to his career, because he played at a very important time for Central Michigan basketball. He played on the Chris Kaman team, the team that went to the NCAA tournament, that won an NCAA tournament game. How close were you following that?
Growing up, I see my dad be able to play overseas. So my dad's really the foundation for all this. And I have to also kind of give him a shout out, because ever since my ankle injury, I've been working out with my father. He's been coming to Callahan every day almost, just getting shots up with me, fine tweaking some things, especially because me knowing how my legs might not be adjusted, just fine tuning the mechanics with my shot, and just he's put a lot of time and effort even to this day, into me. So I have a lot of love and just respect for him, because not only did I see how to do it from him all the way professional, and just hearing all the things that everybody has to say about him, how well respected he is, and just how much of a quote unquote killer he was in college with, playing basketball. It gave me a pathway that I knew I wanted to follow. I knew that I could achieve this. And I with me seeing my dad and knowing this is the guy that is instilling all this information to me, and how many pros he's ran into, how many guys he's seen, how much experience he has with this game. I knew that I could take what he was giving me and try to run with it. And so because of him, I'm in the position that I am today. And I just have the utmost respect for him, because it's countless hours in the gym, every day from the time I could honestly remember, really being into basketball. And so all the skill and all the drills, and especially the shooting. That's one thing that he is, a marquee. He's just a stickler for the shooting, the details and things of that sort. So because of that, me and my brother have been blessed to kind of just given the experience and the knowledge to know how to do certain things better than, I guess the average basketball player. And so because of him, I was able to see how to lead, but also how to play the game of basketball. And so I've learned a lot from him, and I've learned from not only him, but the people that have respect from him from back in the day. There's a lot of people that I run into today saying, "Oh yeah, I knew your pops. We played here. Let me help you with this. Let me tell you about, when I seen you do this, and this." And so it's crazy how much, even when he's not there, he still ends up, being able to do for me. And so because of him, there's a lot of this basketball for me has started off with him, and it continues off with my little brother. So that's kind of how it all started. Honestly, he set the platform for us, for real.
Where's your little brother playing right now?
So my brother right now is playing at Wasatch Academy over in Utah, and he is doing his big one right now. He had like 30 points against IMG earlier this year. So he's been doing his thing. This has been a big year for him, and so we're kind of just telling him to stay consistent, keep things going, and the rest is yet to come. So we'll kind of see. He's getting to the point where he'll start looking at colleges that he wants to go to and things of that sort. And so we're just really excited for him, and he's just an extension of not only my father, but me and my game. And so he's the protege for real. He got it down. He got all the tips and tricks from him to me to, the trainers that I've worked with. And even like Orlando in the summer, he was working out with Orlando. They would be in the gym for hours on end. And I'm there getting my shots up, doing things. But it's also, he does a great job of listening, and he's getting better and better. And, that starts with my father, of course. So
somebody once told me, I asked them, I said, what's the advantage of having somebody whose dad or older brother played the game before them? And they said, well, usually it's because the game is not too big for them. They feel like they belong a little bit more so than somebody who wasn't, maybe because they were already around the game, maybe because they were in locker rooms, maybe because they were getting taught from people like you along the way. So that certainly goes a long way. Take me to, because I'm sure your dad was very plugged in to your first game back, because you getting back on the court was such a huge win on so many fronts. You get a chance, you get back, you go double figures in your first game against Youngstown State, 10 points in 20 minutes, 3 of 5 from the floor. That had to feel like such a big win for you.
It definitely did. And, at the end of the day, I was still upset because I'm trying to win, it felt good to be back on the floor, but I felt that we could have done things better and be more prepared for that game alone. But of course, it was very exciting just to be back out on the floor. And even prior to that game, I don't even know if I should really admit this, but I didn't know how I was going to feel going into this game. Like, there was no real set in stone. Like, I'm not necessarily not saying that I wasn't ready, but it was more so we'll see how it responds as we kind of go. So going into that game, it was more so you're going to play a minute 30, 2 minute spurts, and we'll go from there. And I didn't honestly think much of it as I was going through the game. Like I got out there, I was warm, things felt good, and I'm like, okay, let's see how this goes. And I had a stretch where I played about 5-6 minutes straight, not really too tired, not really feeling in pain or anything like that. And that kind of let me know, where everything stands and how I'm feeling. And just kind of the work that I put in is finally kind of adding up, because there was no real, set in stone way of how I was going to feel at that game, because mind you, I only practiced full go about 3-4 times prior to that. Everything else was kind of just non-contact, getting some shots up, getting some work in when I could. But it was a quick little turnaround. So it surprised me more so than anything else that I had felt that good going into that first game, because there was no real, in days prior to that, when I was in practice, I was real sore after, just because, everybody's going hard in practice, but I felt fairly good for the game. And so, that was exciting, and it really honestly felt good. It definitely felt good. And my parents were excited as well, because they are kind of in the same spot as me. They didn't know how it was going to just kind of tell me, go out there, play hard, do the best you can. And, of course, that's what I tried to do. So it honestly felt good. It was a kind of a release off my shoulders, because I didn't know where I was standing with things. And so I seen that I was capable of still, making some things work.
So responded well in the moment. How about the day after, 2 days after? How did it feel after that?
So that's actually funny, because I probably got 500 questions. How you feel today? How you feel today? How do you feel today? And I felt better after the game than I had felt after practice the week prior to. And it's funny, because every day that I push it harder, I expect the soreness and all the things that usually come with that, but it usually just makes my ankle feel like it's capable of doing more. And that was kind of how my treatment would go. One day I'd start with, regular box jumps, and I'd be, I didn't know I was ready for that. And 2 days later, I'm doing single leg box jumps, because I was able to break some scar tissue up, and I'm feeling good. And now I'm breaking that mental barricade of me being able to, what I'm capable of doing, and, how things go. And so a lot of it was definitely mental, but a lot of it was just me being able to kind of fight through, and it kind of worked with me. I wasn't going too hard to where I was being stupid with it, but I was going hard enough to where I was getting a lot of production, and get back, I guess you could say, for the time I had, missed with me kind of waiting on an MRI and not being able to do as much, treatment. And so, yeah, it's very surprising at the end of the day. We were all shocked that I wasn't, and mind you, I still did my contrast and got my treatment and everything. So it's not like I just kind of showed up and, didn't really do nothing about it, because that's one step that I've taken this year from prior years. I've been in that training room probably just as much as the gym nowadays, but it felt fine. And so I was very excited. And, I had told the coaches and all that, like, the minute restriction, yeah, it's cool, but I think I'm pretty good to go and do as much as I can in the time being.
So as we're going down the home stretch here, I didn't want to finish this without mentioning that Mac made the Detroit Mercy athletic director's honor roll last year. So congratulations to you on that. That's a big deal.
I appreciate it. This is actually the first time in college that I made honor roll, and it was a different level of locking in this past semester. I had to really, really buckle down and be attentive in all my classes, and just putting in that extra effort that years prior to, I would tell myself I was too tired to do this, or I was too tired to do this. But last semester, especially with me being not on the court, it gave me a little extra energy at the end of the day to knock out some homework that I may have, had to submit it late or something like that. But it was it's kind of surprising, but this was the best GPA I've had in my college career so far. So I guess constantly improving. So that's can't be mad at that.
Mac is a communications major, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. What classes have you been taking?
So this year I'm doing a lot of last minute credits that I may have not had prior to, and just going through my classes. So I'm taking a introduction or psychology class with religion. I'm doing a professional writing class. So it's a lot of classes that necessarily aren't straight for communications, but these are classes that I missed or kind of substituted with communication classes last semester. And so I'm sports writing class as well. So it's a lot of writing as of, and then I also have a speech class, which I tried to do like 2-3 years ago, never ended up getting the credit. So I had to kind of make it up last minute. So I'm doing a lot of speeches nowadays as well. So it's not a very hard semester, but it's kind of like these are the final little credits I need to walk the stage. And, so I'm just trying to buckle down, make sure I submit everything on time, put the extra effort in a little bit just to get that little better grade, the extra couple points, and, they kind of all add up. So
I'll tell you something. It is not easy to walk across the stage at the University of Detroit Mercy. It is not like other schools in that way. All right, before we let you go, rest of the season, you've got a handful of games left. There's still a chance you could host a first-round game in the Horizon League tournament. What do you want out of the rest of the way?
I just want us to lock in and play for each other. At the end of the day, I feel like we're getting to a point where we can start playing some of our best basketball with our defense and guys just being confident in the shots that they take and making shots. And then as far as, our leaders are all kind of on the same page, talking, explaining what we need to do, how we can get things better, what we need to talk to Coach Monty about, how we feel, how we see things on the court. And so this can be a very good stretch for us. And I feel like this is the best time for us because I feel like right now is when we'll be able to really have everyone buy in and lock in. And so I'm really excited and looking forward to these next couple of games in this little stretch because I feel like this will be our best basketball and we'll be able to really shake some things up and really hopefully get that home game to start playoffs off. So that's kind of down the line, but that's a goal kind of subconsciously that we really want ourselves. And so you can expect us to keep showing up, keep playing hard. And at the end of the day, we're going to go out there trying to play our best and win these games. So I'm very excited.
Well, you're as much of a leader as anybody on this team, especially considering that you've already been here. You were already here last year. And just watching this team as compared to last season or just in general, the thing I like is when it's on, when it looks right, it's the defense that is smothering. And you guys have this ability to frustrate your opponents. I mean, there's no better indication than the fact that teams have a hard time shooting threes against you. For years, other teams had shot so well from beyond the arc against you guys, but this year it's totally flipped. And I would imagine that it is infuriating playing against you guys when the defense looks the way it has looked in some of your wins this year. So even if you're not at home, even if you have to go on the road, in a lot of those situations, especially when you're playing some of those higher seeds, there's also some added pressure when you're the home team to go out and get wins. So even if you're not at home, you have this ability because of the way your identity has evolved over the course of the season that you guys could easily go out and get a first round win, regardless of whether you're home or on the road. That's a fun identity to have when it's defense, when it's hustle, when it's heart, and it's rebounding. That plays in Detroit.
Definitely. When we all show up on the same page with the same mentality going into the game, it's scary because that is something that not a lot of teams can do. At the end of the day, not a lot of teams have that camaraderie and togetherness that we potentially have and possess at times. And so just consistently showing up with that same energy and that same mindset going into games is what will be that last step to kind of lead to where it's when you know exactly what you're going to get when we show up, not all right, are they going to play hard today? And what is our defense rotation going to look like? How is this? How's this? Nah, at the end of the day, we need to 100% know that if no shots fall, we're going to make it as hard for them to make these shots than us, shooting the shots as well. And so, we'll constantly keep going at it. And it's actually fun in practice because, of course, when you're playing live, everyone wants to be on offense. But at the same time, we try to not let the other team score, So it's multiple practices where frustration on the other team because they're not being able to score and this team's running it up a little bit. So that's just the identity that we want to bring to every game and just make it hard at the end of the day for the other team that we're going to play because that's Detroit. Titans up, I guess.
I've heard that before. We are way over time. It is easy to see that you're a communications major. Mak Manciel, outstanding stuff from you. Really, really enjoyed it. So much fun and continued success. So glad that you're back. Best surprise of the year and can't wait to see what it looks like down the stretch. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It was fun. It was definitely fun.
Never gets old seeing Mak Manciel. And that wraps up another edition of Tighten Up the Podcast. So don't forget, it's your chance to help continue the show. All you have to do, throw a rating, throw a comment, throw a like on the show, whether you're listening to it on Apple, Spotify, iHeart, however you get this podcast. If you're watching along on social media, on X, on Instagram, throw it a like as well. Those little things go a very long way. You can find The Shield at social media. You can find them on Instagram at The Shield NIL, same place on X. You can find me as well. You can find me at that Dan Hasty on X. You can find me at Dan Hasty on Instagram. Back with more coming up later in this week and into next week. And I'll talk to you Titans of Industry next time.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Tighten Up, the podcast. Join our community at The Shield on theshieldnil.org and follow us on X and Instagram at The Shield NIL.